My friends, I'm Big Z and welcome to Lore Star. Today we are going to be talking about the Jedi Order and their rules and expectations regarding adult relations, romantic attachments, and procreation. It's a topic that serves as the primary conflict for the prequel trilogy, and yet one that is still surrounded by a ton of misconceptions and false assumptions. So today we are asking, are the Jedi truly celibate, or can they engage in romantic and adult relations?
Remember, my dear Obi-Wan. I've loved you always.
Speaking of adult relations, today's sponsor is Adam and Eve.
What were you thinking we might do in those hours, wife?
Adam and Eve is a store, and they sell products.
I might surprise you. I found my old shock collar the other day.
Products that I am unable to show you on YouTube.
That's a handy toy. Might I?
Products that may be a little more Sith than Jedi in nature.
Give that thing back to my master!
If you are over 18, you may use the promo code LORE to get 50% off any one item from their store and free shipping to the US and Canada. Which is awesome because they've got some pretty high quality and expensive stuff on there, and 50% is quite a big chunk and a great way to get started on your Sith accessorizing.
I'm burning for you like never before.
Adam and Eve. Come to the dark side. We have cookies.
So worth the wait. We'll have to set aside a few hours every day.
I hope you at least told Padme I said hello.
One of the ideas really fleshed out in the prequels was the cultural and societal expectations that the Jedi Order placed on their initiates and their members. The original trilogy gave us a lot about their philosophy and worldview, but left much of their day-to-day practices shrouded in mystery. The prequels showed us a lot more about the Jedi, and we got to learn a lot about their expectations and the rules that they placed on their members. For example, we know that Yoda said that Luke was too old to begin his training, but it wasn't until the prequels that we saw just how young most Jedi were when they began that training, usually being taken between the ages of 2 and 4 years old. One of the biggest expectations introduced in the prequel era was the emphasis on attachment. We see in the prequels that the Jedi seem to forbid love because it leads to the dark side, or so they say, but I'm not so sure that's the case. This plays out as the major conflict for all three prequel movies, with The Phantom Menace calling out Anakin's attachment to his mother, and Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith both centering on his love and attachment to Padme. The Jedi warn against this because it leads to attachment and passion and possession, and the Jedi believe that these are dispositions that lead to the dark side. However, this has led many to believe that the Jedi are totally celibate, a misconception that continues to propagate to this day. So first, let's take a look at what is forbidden to the Jedi. The Jedi forbid possessive relationships, a relationship where the Jedi demands some sort of exclusivity from the object of their affection.
Possession is forbidden.
Now, the inverse of this mandate is the mandate against attachment.
Attachment is forbidden.
The discouragement of possession means that you cannot request exclusivity from the object of your desire, but the Jedi also have a mandate against attachment, which forbade the Jedi from offering exclusivity to their partner. This rule was designed to keep the Jedi from becoming attached to anything other than the Force. This means that monogamous relationships were strictly prohibited, since the Jedi cannot offer exclusivity, since that would resemble attachment, nor request it, since that would be possessive. Kiari Mundi is a fantastic example of this. Kiari Mundi was a strong believer that the Jedi's attachment should be solely to the Force and nothing else. Furthermore, he was one of very few males in his species, placing a heavy pressure on him to help propagate the next generation. Despite the fact that Kiari Mundi acquired many wives, the relationships were purely platonic and purely carnal. He never really visited any of his wives other than for the express purpose of showing up just to sire children. And he lived his days as a totally absentee father for the most part, never really seeing or getting to know or helping to raise any of the kids that he had. At one point during the war, many of his children were actually killed, but Mundi didn't even bat an eye. This is a perfect example of just how far the Jedi had fallen from their pursuit of goodness in favor of dogma. See, the existence of the rule began as a way to discourage Jedi from letting their attachments rule them, but that was all the rule was at one point, just not let your attachments rule you. Don't make decisions based on your attachments. It was an attempt to keep them from making decisions based on personal emotion without listening to the will of the Force. Over time, walls were built around the law to try and reinforce that protection, but because of how legalistic the Jedi became, this left room for loopholes, as was the case in Kiari Mundi. Oftentimes, these loopholes rarely resembled the original intent for the law and more served as a way of saying that you were following the law because you weren't breaking any of the specific rules, but at the same time, it's hard to argue that these things were actually in service of the light side of the Force, much more resembling the calloused heartlessness of the dark side of the Force. It's important to remember that the Jedi didn't always forbid romantic attachments. Dave Filoni addressed this in Season 1 of The Gallery, where he points out that love and attachment do not necessarily lead to the dark side. He points out that the Jedi of the prequel era have lost their way, implying that there was a time where the Jedi knew this and they encouraged it.
Because Qui-Gon hasn't given up on the fact that Jedi are supposed to actually care and love, and that's not a bad thing.
And we actually have material to support this. It seems that the Jedi Order tends to evolve in cycles over centuries. For example, in the High Republic novel Light of the Jedi, it mentions that one of the Jedi wanted to marry another Jedi. She is ultimately dissuaded, but her reasoning is actually really important here. She isn't dissuaded because the Council wouldn't approve. She's dissuaded because she thinks that he would not return her affections. Now, Lucasfilm wants us to look at the High Republic era as the Jedi doing it right, and they have left little clues to imply that the Jedi of this era would not turn their noses at two of their members being married. Now, as I said, the Jedi Order moves in cycles, and Revan's cycle was actually very similar to the atmosphere we see in the prequels. Here, the Jedi have also stagnated and become dogmatic. They are so consumed here with the idea of pacifism, for example, that they have no problem letting the Mandalorians rape, pillage, and plunder Republic worlds just because they believe it would be wrong for them, the Jedi, to get their hands dirty. Even though we assume it happened earlier, Revan was one of the oldest named Jedi to be given special dispensation to marry. However, even then in the Revan novel, it was clearly stated that this dispensation was given quite begrudgingly. The book even implies that Revan was considered to be a ceremonial Jedi by the Order. He was essentially given the title of Jedi Knight for PR reasons, but he wasn't officially part of the Order anymore, or at least the Jedi Council didn't recognize him to be. Remember, this was an era where the Jedi Council is functionally very similar to the one we see in the prequels. But if we flash forward 300 years, the Jedi had a massive shakeup after their temple was sacked by the Sith Empire led by Darth Malgus. They spent several years in meditation on their ancient homeworld of Tython. Yes, that Tython.
What a piece of junk!
And if you think that would make the Jedi even more out of touch and dogmatic, that's actually what I expected too. But it turns out the Jedi came back to the galaxy with a much better understanding of the light side of the Force, with more emphasis on the Force and less on tradition. Jedi of this era were actually allowed to marry quite often. They still required permission from the Jedi Council, but this permission was given much more freely than it was in the other eras we've seen. And while it's true that KOTOR and SWOTOR are no longer canon, the High Republic is canon, and it too confirms that Jedi have not always put these restrictions on committed consensual relationships. So this brings us back to the prequel era. Up until now, we've been talking about what wasn't allowed, so you may have noticed we haven't actually touched on sex itself. See, in the Jedi of Anakin's era, they forbade all forms of romantic attachments. While romantic feelings were often unavoidable, it was the attachment and possession that was forbidden. We can see this very clearly in Obi-Wan's relationship with Satine, where he did fight his feelings for her, but he still couldn't help the fact that he did love her.
All right. Had you said the word, I would have left the Jedi Order.
Obi-Wan even said that he would have gladly left the Jedi Order to be with her. And this makes sense since he knew that the type of relationship he wanted was forbidden by the Jedi. But forbidding attachments and monogamy left quite a gaping loophole for the Jedi. While relationships were largely forbidden, the Jedi tended to turn a blind eye to casual flings and purely recreational activities.
Do it.
While it's true that Anakin's relationship with Padme was forbidden, the fact that she was pregnant with his child actually wasn't a problem. The problem was that everyone knew how Anakin felt about Padme, so they knew that he didn't just knock her up. They knew that he would have wanted to be involved, and that he would have found a way to be the father for his children that he didn't have growing up. This really serves to highlight just how far the Jedi have fallen by the prequels. They would rather Anakin bounce after knocking Padme up rather than taking responsibility for his children and raising them as Padawans of his own. I did a whole video breaking down the Chosen One prophecy and how it all ties into the idea of attachment, and that Anakin's role was to remind the Jedi that attachment and love were both ideas that were crucial to the service of the light. And I think that this lore for this topic actually really serves as some pretty substantial evidence for that theory. You should check it out if you haven't seen it yet, and keep in mind all of the things that we've talked about today regarding how the Jedi looked at even romantic relationships and how far their philosophy is from the actual light side of the Force. Anakin went to the Sith because the Jedi wanted him to be an absentee father, and Anakin knew that was wrong. The Jedi were tolerating casual sex and meaningless hookups, but they were frowning on people who actually wanted to love his family. But here's what's really interesting. Romance and love are equally forbidden by the Sith. Even though the Sith value possession and passion, they believe that attachment and compassion lead to weakness. Anakin assumed that he would be able to keep his family if he left the Jedi, but in a great twist of irony, he ended up losing everything. But of course, the story didn't end there, because here's the thing. Anakin set out to embrace attachment and love, and he was eventually successful in reshaping the Jedi in accordance with this recognition. It was because of his attachment to his son that he turned against Palpatine and actually destroyed the Sith. And Luke would eventually go on to make his own Jedi Order, a Jedi Order that, at least in Legends, permitted romance, marriage, and adult relations. That is the beauty of all of this. Because of the actions of Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi Order was broken down and stripped of its dogma and legalism, and reformed by his son in the image of the light. A true Jedi Order. But anyway, that is the truth on how the Jedi forbid relationships while still giving the big ol' thumbs up to casual sex. And I want to know what all of you, my friends, have to say about this, so let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, or if you learned absolutely nothing new, you can feel free to leave a thumbs down, completely guilt-free, because that tells me I'm not doing my job. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the lore be with you, now and forever.